Hello everyone, my name is Lisa Rose and I'm Queer Screen Festival Director. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of where I am streaming from, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to them. Sovereignty was never ceded in Australia. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to this live Q&A that we're doing with the wonderful filmmaker, writer-director, Marion Hill from the film My Belle, My Beauty. I'm going to welcome Marion into the stream. Hello, Marion.
Hey, Lisa. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. It's going pretty well. For those watching at home, Marion and I met at Frameline about 5 years ago when she had her first short film there. And from that moment, when I saw that short, I knew she
ever since.
Yes, friends ever since. Many an Instagram message, and I feel that I knew that you were clearly a filmmaker to watch when I saw your first short. You have a really lovely eye for directing, and we showed your second short, The Goddess House, I think in our festival 2 years ago. 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So there we go. So here we are for My Belle, My Beauty, which is such a wonderful, wonderful film. We had our in-person screening of it on Friday and the audience absolutely loved it. And it's screening on demand across Australia until the 3rd of March for people to check it out. So I want to ask, like, obviously you're based in New Orleans and a lot of the cast is from New Orleans and the crew. And it's so why the south of France? There?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks, Lisa. I think you're one of the only programmers who has seen me through that trajectory from first short to second short, now to feature. So that feels really special, even though you live on the other side of the world, you know.
Yes.
You've been very much a part of my journey. So I'm so glad to be still in your fest, still invited, still making films that you like enough to program. So this being my first feature, obviously, I was really trying to work with the resources that I had access to. And that's kind of my creative process in general, is really like cooking with the ingredients I have in the fridge. And something that I did have in my fridge was access to this wonderful house in this town in the south of France. My maternal side of the family is France-based, Vietnamese, but they're France-based. And so I have family all across France. And this was a town I actually spent a lot of time in growing up. It was sort of a place that was very close to me, that I knew like the back of my hand. So it felt like a really obvious place to kind of give myself the time and the support system to make this work with what we had. And it was amazing because for creative reasons also, to just be able to go to a place and just incubate and everyone really be in the zone. Because we all actually lived in the house and in 2 neighboring houses.
So how long were you actually there in the south of France, kind of as a crew?
As a crew, I would say when everyone was there, it was about 3 weeks, and then some of us were there for like 5 weeks.
Right.
But it was very fast, and right before COVID, it was September 2019. So we were very lucky.
Look, in the south of France, like the scenery, it just looks, it's a good thing to shoot. I'm sure
it is, you know, it had production value all over it, and I was just like, this is, and it was also, you know, for me, like I had a lot of kind of burgeoning love, self-discovery moments in that place.
Yeah.
So this film felt, you know, like the amalgamation of all those moments in many ways.
Yeah. So it's like the place is like a character, but also obviously one of the other things that feels very much like just such a central part to the film is the music. And obviously not only the music of the characters, you know, a couple of the characters being musicians, but just the music throughout the film. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your connection to music and the importance of having that as such a central part of the film.
Yeah. Music is so important to me as a person. I did grow up a musician, mainly a pianist. From when I was 4, I was playing piano, and I was my mom was very into me being a classical pianist, so I was kind of on track to be a classical pianist for a while. But because of that, that's sort of like my creative route, I would say. That was where I really early on discovered to, express myself. And so that's always been a big part of how I build into film. I have this thing where I don't really know what a story is until I know what it sounds like musically, and I can't really write without knowing without listening to music. So yeah, because of that, I actually started working with a composer like almost 2 years before we even shot the film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, here in New Orleans. He's just a friend of mine, but he's this genius named Mahmoud Chokti. And we were just friends from around town, and I told him about this idea I had, and then we would have these monthly sessions where he would just kind of play around and write stuff, or we would listen to some music, and we just started to build ideas. And then I would take what we came up with and use them while I was writing. So I kind of had songs in my head for each moment. Yeah, so that was kind of a cool part of the process that I want to keep doing if I can with other composers for other films. And then when we eventually recorded everything, we did it here in New Orleans, where musicians are very much gigging musicians. So you kind of just have tons of amazing musicians here who kind of just rolled through the studio, and we had 25 musicians, or I think maybe 30, rolling through to just record 1 or 2 tracks each. And yeah, that was kind of one of the best parts of the whole filmmaking experience, actually.
Yeah, right. Because you're kind of ingrained in that. Like, you've kind of shot a few video clips and things like that in the New Orleans music community and stuff, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I also worked at the local radio station, WWOZ, for a little while, doing actually making films and videos for their online content. But because of that, I was able to connect with musicians every day, and also learn a lot about the music of New Orleans and the history of the music here.
Okay, cool. And can you talk a bit about the, I should actually say, if anyone has any questions, you can just pop them in the comments. And
I'm sorry it's so dark also. I didn't anticipate.
You're like, I'm going to do this outside and be all fancy, and now the sun's gone down.
I didn't anticipate this. I'm sorry, everyone.
It's
get really close.
It's very dark here too, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning. It's because it's raining. But yeah. What was I going to ask? I was going to ask about the casting. So can you... because a lot of the cast, they hadn't really done many feature films before, or some of them I don't think had done any feature films before. So can you talk a little bit about that process of finding your cast?
Yeah. That part was similar to the composer part, where I had an idea, I had the house, I had the place, I had the vibe all figured out for what I wanted to do. And then I actually kind of grabbed amazing actors who I just knew about in my life. So Sivan, I actually also met at a film festival in 2016, and had always wanted to work with her. So I kind of just was like, okay, you're going to be this part in the film. And then the 2 leads, Hannah Pepper and Idella Johnson. Idella, I knew both of them just locally around town, and kind of approached them both separately and formed a relationship with them and talked about what I wanted to do, and just got to know each other. And there was an official casting day where I did have people come and read for Lane with Birdie, just to kind of check chemistry, but like I already knew who was going to play Lane. And I think everyone, and then that day very much confirmed it, because Hannah, they just immediately were drawn to each other in this very cliche but honest way. And Hannah left the room, and Idella like was giggling just by like to herself, and thought she was having a private moment. And I was like, oh, I saw that. So yeah, that was kind of it. And they love each other a lot.
Yeah, well, they had great chemistry. So obviously, you know, it's sort of seeing polyamorous relationships on screen is something that, like, for me as a programmer, I'm starting to see more of. It's not something that has been prevalent. From people that I know who are polyamorous and have seen your film, they think it's one of the most authentic representations they've seen. Have you had much feedback from the poly community about the film and the portrayal?
Yeah, I get I have heard that, and that does feel good, because for me I wasn't interested in like explaining polyamory in any way, and I think because of that I was able, and because I wasn't worried about explaining anything, I think that's where the kind of authenticity feels heightened, because for folks who know, they just know, you know. I have had really interesting conversations with some poly communities just about how it is, a lot of the behavior in this film is quite unethical practice of polyamory, which is a little confusing to those who don't know. So, you know, it's always a balance. It's like you're either overly explaining or the opposite. But I think, this, in that way, I'm hopeful that, you know, it triggers conversation for folks still around, and education around why this isn't ethical. Like, what are these people doing that actually isn't quite, you know, the representative of the values.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. What was I going to ask next? Yeah, so the writing process. So obviously you were saying that you had music really early on. You kind of had elements of the story early on. You knew where you wanted to set it. Like, it feels like knowing where you wanted to set it and having music like that early on feels like a little bit unusual. So can you talk a little bit about the scripting process, like the length of that, and sort of, have you had any sort of particular type of like, were the actors particularly involved, or was it completely scripted at the point of when casting happened? Or
so I think by the time I started looking for my actors, I had 50 pages of what would ultimately be like an 85-page script, and they were not very good. But I kind of just had, you know, I was giving a good sense of what the vibe of this film was going to be, and what the topics were. And that was the point at which I decided it was time for me to find actors. And with those 50 pages, we were able to, that was kind of our jumping off point for really talking more specifically with each, mainly with Birdie and with Lane, talking with them as I kept writing in the same way as I did with music, and just allowing, you know, their true voices and their true selves to kind of inform what was going on, and inform the nuances of the tension. We did not do, I get the question a lot, did we do improv? And we didn't really. Like, we did a lot of off-screen improv and a lot of development outside of the script, but when we were in it, we were really, you know, doing what was in the pages. And I think we also went on a retreat me and the two leads. By retreat, I mean we drove to Mississippi and stayed in a barn for one night.
That sounds lovely.
Well, it wasn't, but that's why it was great, because there's nothing like trauma to bond you, right? So
that's very true. Very true.
So yeah, it was kind of a spooky situation, but because of that, they really developed their support system, and I developed mine with them. And on that trip also, we talked a lot about the story, and the script was really kind of still breathing until like as we were filming, but not that intensely.
Right.
Yeah. But I think I really wanted to allow the script to keep breathing and keep being informed by things. And I think that too is a situation where there's a balance between overdoing that and like, I'm still learning how to let things evolve naturally, but also like know exactly where we're going.
Yeah. And it's a very multicultural film, and and obviously it's an interracial relationship. Was it always the intention to have an African American actress, or was that it kind of just happened?
It just happened. I mean, in the sense that Idella and I wanted to work together, and this was the material that I was working on.
Right.
And yeah, we did. I had also, it would have been maybe even more multicultural, in my dream world, multicultural, but, given that my approach was to really work with actors who I already had a relationship with, and who were excited about this material and about our collaboration. It was kind of, I took these 3 wonderful actors and just kind of placed them into this web, and kind of allowed them to breathe as in their own bodies from there as much as possible.
Okay. And so obviously we've been in a global pandemic for the last 2 years, in case you are unaware now. I don't know if it's hit New Orleans, but I think it might have. And obviously filmmaking. So it premiered at Sundance 2021. Is that right? Yes, that's January 2021. So right in the smack bang middle of the pandemic. And obviously, so making films is a very long process, and like I imagine, like in your fantasy, you had probably a bit of a different sort of feeling of what the journey might be like. Like, how have you found the last kind of year of the journey of the film being out there? And you also got distribution in the US, which is fantastic.
We did, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think really it was that's a question I'm still working on every day, is like what the experience of releasing this. It was such a, it was like when on the Sundance premiere, it was simultaneously the best day of my life and the worst day of my life in many ways, right? So it was just holding both of those things, being completely alone and isolated during that premiere, and kind of I think the hardest part has been all of my feedback, because I'm a very heart-centered person. Like I absorb energy from, absorb responses in a physical way. And so for all of the responses to the film to be internet based, like the few times that I have been able to do live screenings have just been so wonderful to like actually be, around folks. But yeah, that was a challenge. But I'm so grateful, like the film just here in the US especially just went places that I never ever dreamed it would, like to get distribution. Then we had a theatrical release, of course, during a pandemic, so that was yet again another dichotomy of feelings. But I think all in all, I'm just glad, that it's out there for anyone who wants to see it.
Yeah, for sure.
And hopefully in Australia after this, after your festival.
Yes. Someone is asking, who is distributing the film?
In North America, it is Good Deed Entertainment, and then internationally we have Wasabi, they are Canada-based, handling things, and we have about 4 European territories and also Latin America. So that part is very exciting.
It is. And so how have, obviously coming from short films, when you make short films generally, in terms of the festival run and things of films, you not always, because sometimes you'll have people doing it for you, but you often are very involved in the process of where everything is placed and where everything's going. How have you found the experience of what's the word I'm looking for, making a feature and then it's kind of entrusted to other people to kind of go and take it on its journey? How have you found that experience?
Oh, you mean distribution wise?
Yeah. Is it like a total, it's just very different.
You're taking us into danger zone.
Feel free to not answer this question. We can answer just blink twice.
No, I mean, I think what I would love to say is for any artists who go through this, it is hard for so many reasons. And it's, again, the best thing and the worst thing that will ever happen to you. And that's real. That truly was what my experience was with distribution. For my first feature, it's just more vulnerable than I ever knew. I didn't even know how vulnerable what I was doing was until it was happening already. And then having to kind of backtrack and integrate all that stuff. So I mean, I am still processing it, I think, truthfully. Yeah. But I have a lot of gratitude, and I'm very humbled, and also just pushed to be better with the next one after all this.
Mm-hmm. The next one. I like the sound of the next one.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Anything about that one, or it's you have to
no, I can.
Okay. Please do.
I mean, not a ton, other than I'm working on a new script that is set in southern Louisiana, sort of between New Orleans and the coast of Louisiana, that not a lot of folks have probably seen before in the fishing communities. And it's it follows a family, a Vietnamese family here in Louisiana who have just lost their patriarch. And but it's a story about, love and connection, and we'll follow them as they kind of not grieve, but awaken out of this new stage of life. So that's all I'll say for now.
Oh, well, I'm intrigued.
Good.
Because love is obviously very much a central part of all three films that you have made already. Is that something that you think is a theme? I think I read somewhere that you call yourself a hopeless romantic. Is that something that, the theme of love, is that where that's a theme you kind of want to?
Definitely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
The world needs love, I can tell you right now.
I mean, love is in everything that we do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thanks for noticing that.
That's okay.
Do you enjoy a good love story, Lisa?
Oh, yeah. It's you should make a rom-com. Make a rom-com? Do you think you would ever make it? Is comedy something you would be ever interested in doing? As a programmer, in a queer festival,
tell me.
The audience I'm generalizing here, but it's the most common question we get as a programmer when asked about the festival is like, what is the films with happy endings? Like, what's the light, happy film? Because, us as a queer community,
I know,
we've had a lot of people have had lives that have had difficulty. And then, obviously there's been a lot of films where it's kind of processing that, which is, they're important stories to be told. Absolutely. And, but, we deserve rom-coms too.
Mm-hmm. It's true. But can they be happy and inspiring and hopeful without being rom-com?
Absolutely they can.
I think rom-com has a strange reputation, maybe it's a cultural difference. I don't know how it's perceived in Australia, but here I think Netflix.
I think you are right. Oh, that's horrible. That's my doorbell.
That was really loud.
That's awkward. That's what happens when you're doing a live stream.
That's what happens. I'm in the dark. You have someone at the door.
My extremely loud doorbell just went off. Keep it in here so my daughter doesn't wake up when she's napping. But
saved by the bell. That's a sign, huh?
That's safe. Perhaps that is the sign that we should end this chat. Marion, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Lisa. This was fun.
It was lovely to see you again, and hopefully with your next film we can see you here in person down here in Australia. So I want to thank you, and anyone who wants to, they can still check out the film on demand Australia-wide until the 3rd of March. Thanks, Marion.
Thanks, y'all. Happy Mardi Gras.